joining us. This is Paul Wilson.
And Chris Empke.
And you're listening to the Diesel Performance Podcast. Chris, we are jumping into April, and I am starting to get really excited as the weather is starting to break.
Yeah, spring fever's amongst us. Events that were not here in 2020 are now coming back in 2021.
That's right.
So there's some light at the end of the tunnel for sure.
UCC's coming. We're going to be talking about it a lot in the coming weeks, guys. Yep. So we're really excited for that. Also, I got some messages back and forth with our buddy Duramax Jack.
Oh.
So I think there's going to be some cool stuff coming up here in the near future.
Super exciting.
Talking to Jack. And speaking of YouTubers, we have a couple of awesome YouTubers on today, Chris.
Yeah. Denny Diesel, really big in the L5P space. Duramax Matt also. I think it's unique with these guys, and we're going to hear more as the interview goes on, but I think about guys in the diesel industry, guys that have a name and reputation currently, and I think of these guys have been in this industry a very, very long time. Us at the company, for example, like if you're a Duramax guy, you know, you messed around with LB7s and then upgraded to LBZs, and then, you know, LMLs came, you know, and you see there's this evolution of growth, you know, that you experience with these trucks. And here you have two guys, younger guys, and their start in diesel performance is honestly working with one of the most complex diesel platforms, or Duramax platforms, rather, out of all the years of Duramaxes, which is, it made me take a step back and go, wow, I'm old. We're in this industry. We're old. We've been around the block a time or two. So it's nice to, you know, thinking about years past, how I had to regain information and learn about stuff versus what today's technology is. I think it's just, you know, without further ado, I think we just go right into that interview.
Absolutely. Duramax Matt, how the hell are you?
Paul, what's going on, man? How are you doing? Thanks for having me.
No problem, man. I'm doing so good. Thanks for joining us today. Hey, guys, we also have on the show Denny Diesel. Denny, how the hell are you?
Good.
Awesome. Well, guys, thanks for taking the time for starters, right? And getting on here, talk about diesels. I think what's really unique with you two is your introduction into the diesel world. So, Matt, we'll start with you. How did you get started into this, and what's some of your background with diesel altogether?
I kind of fell into it. Started watching YouTube videos, you know, in my 30-something now. So I don't know, just in the last 3 or 4 years, my friends had diesels around me, and I was always awed by I would say the exhaust note and their ability to make a lot of power with, I would say, not a lot of effort. And that kind of drew me to it. Started watching YouTube, went down the rabbit hole, and I decided that I was just, you know, after following some of the guys on YouTube and seeing some of these awesome like videos out there, I was like, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna go get a diesel. I've been a GM guy at heart my whole life. No one will ever change my mind. So naturally, it was a Duramax. Fell into the L5P. I guess I would say accidentally. I was going to get one at the end of the season, and GM wasn't making the LMLs anymore, and therefore I had to get my, you know, luck of the draw with an L5P. Little did I know it was locked. So getting to that maybe later.
So friends influentially influenced you and YouTube, which is crazy. Denny, how about you? How did you get your start into diesel, and what's your background?
So basically, growing up, all my friends had diesel pickup trucks, everything like that. I always wanted one, but my parents would not buy me one. My dad insisted if I was not towing 30,000 pounds that I did not need a diesel. We went out and looked at several of them, and he just couldn't get past the point of one having 100,000 miles and the price point that they were at.
Right.
So I saved up my money, and I went out and I brought one. I was a Ram guy my whole life, always loved Rams, wanted a mega cab forever. But when I was looking to get one, I saw how easy it was to make power with the L5Ps. I can really just tune them up and already at 600 horsepower. So I figured I'd just go out and get that one. Okay. And I did, and I loved it ever since.
So what's unique here, right, is your guys' introduction into diesels is off of a new platform, right, with the L5P, correct?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah, Chris, I think you and I both think of it in this kind of context of like we've seen the evolution of the Duramax over time.
Yeah.
And so we see this L5P and we're like, oh man, look at how far it's come.
Right.
I love talking to two guys who are both kind of sounds like brought into diesels right at this level.
Yeah.
And I think it's going to be really interesting to see their comparison 10 years from now at where
Right.
trucks are at
Right.
compared to where we're looking when we're 20 years into this.
Well, I just
Well, GM isn't making diesels in 10 more years, apparently, with their press release, so that will be interesting.
yeah, that'll be that's a topic for another day. But it's crazy to me, like Paul being in the industry and doing what we do.
Yeah.
And knowing, LB7s and all the older Duramaxes, and like the L5P is such a unique, complex platform. It is simple to make power, right? As far as what the platform can be, but there's also a level of complexity there that in this era, right, 2021, and these guys that we have on talking about how they got into this, influences from friends and YouTube. Well, when we got into this, YouTube wasn't what it is now. YouTube didn't have the influencers and, the how-tos, which is something both Matt and Denny bring to the table. So it's just, what's their perspective on diesel 10 years from now, like you mentioned?
Yeah.
But it's crazy to see how they got into diesels now compared to what it was 10 years ago, and what the future looks like in 10 years on that side as well.
Sure. Well, they're not an old guy. They didn't grow up reading magazines.
Right. I did. That is old. That's old technology.
What a nerd. Guys, that also brings up another good point. One of the reasons we're having you guys on today is you guys both have YouTube channels that feature your L5P. So you guys have both created some sort of YouTube celebrity status in this niche of L5P performance.
Yeah.
We'd love to see it. I wanted to talk a little bit more about some of these things because L5P upgrades, they're just starting to hit the market.
Yeah.
We're just starting to see like this what Chris and I would consider standard features for the aftermarket world are just starting to get released to the public. So Denny, I thought we would start with you. When you first got now you have a 2020, correct?
Yes.
Perfect. When you first got your 2020, what were some of the highlights and lowlights of the truck?
So when I first got the truck, it was totally different from 17 through 19 trucks. Just first off, the truck's just a lot bigger in general. Like parking it next to a 17 through 19 truck, it looks like a 1500 truck. It makes those trucks look so small. I just love how big the truck is and everything like that.
Okay. How about, that the driving experience, the windshield experience? What were some of the highlights and lowlights there?
When I first got in it, like, it's just totally different in every way. Even though the interior is just a little bit upgraded, it just feels like a totally different truck with a heads-up display. I love the blind spot monitoring in the mirrors. That just makes driving the truck so much easier. Even like the rear view backup camera, that being a camera, that just helps your driving experience like 10 times more.
Okay.
Absolutely. Now, you had some experience with some gas vehicles before this. What'd you think about things like throttle response and ability to pass somebody?
Yeah, that's definitely there, the torque with the diesels. I mean, driving it, you're never really heavy on the throttle. You just give it a little bit, and it's all right there. Going from a gas to a diesel, there's really no way you can ever go back to a gas vehicle.
It's definitely a different feel, and I have guys that call in, they came from, I see it a lot in the Colorados, actually. Guys went from a V6 to a 2.8, and they're so used to one thing, they've been driving a gasoline V6 for so long, then they get into the diesel, they're like, I don't know how the power is different, this, that, and the other.
Yeah.
And then the direct opposite, you go from a diesel to a gas, and all these things are gutless piles of shit, So they definitely make power differently.
I love that. Now, Denny, you have your truck tuned, and I thought it was really interesting. I spent some time watching some of the videos, and you actually went through some struggles with getting it tuned. Now, a lot of YouTubers out there would kill all of that footage and only release it once it was finally done and everything was perfect. I thought it was really unique that you showed some of the problems you dealt with. Can you walk our podcast listeners kind of what your experience was like tuning your truck?
Yeah, first, it was terrible. I mean, when I first got my truck, I was so jacked up about getting it tuned. I reached out to a few people, and they said, oh, yeah, we can do it, no problem. So I went ahead, I ordered everything. I got the new ECM, got literally the whole package, just so I could do it right. I'm all about doing it once, doing it correctly. So what happened was I got the tunes, loaded them in, my truck would not start. Now, everyone's insisting that it needs to be a mobilizer relearn just because of security functions and everything like that. I went ahead, I ordered the dealer tool, the MDI-2.
Oh, my.
A mobilizer learn it truck would still not start. Then after talking to the tuners and the people I brought my stuff from, they came to realize that the operating softwares from the 17 through 19 trucks are different on the 20. So it took my tuner a little bit of time to get that figured out. But once I got the truck, started, I mean, it ran really crappy. It jerked every time you left the throttle. It just was not there because they did not have the correct fueling, like 17 through 19s or 6 speeds. The 2020 drives you 10 speeds. There's different fueling on every shift and things like that. But after some time, we got it dialed in, and I absolutely love the truck now.
Oh, that's awesome. I mean, one of the things that's unique about you, Denny, is a lot of the content that you do create, you are showing the hardships. So it's the downfalls and the positives. And, you know, there's no secret to anyone that watches your channel. You have one of the first, you know, Stealth 67 turbos that, you know, we had helped set you up with. And you were one of the first 2020s, right? And you displayed some of the hardships because we're running into some actuator issues. And I was waiting to see some of that information drop, and you documented everything all together. And I actually have guys that call into the shop that reference those videos like, hey, do you have it fixed now? And it's like, well, yeah, Denny was an early adopter in this. So for you kind of, you know, once you experience that tuning side of things, like what could be worse than that? It's good content for you. You're going to get views from that. So, I mean, is that also kind of some of that whole motive there, that you just want to be as direct and informative and, you know, kind of show guys what the real world is when modifying a truck and being one of the first?
Yeah, and that too. I mean, I like putting the issues out there because a lot of times, like when you run into an issue and you Google it or even run it through YouTube, no one even talks about it. They just talk about like how it got fixed or just totally skip it in general. I mean, I had so many questions about my truck that nobody even talked about, posts about issues. I said, like, why not me just go out there, post all the issues I'm having? And it's actually crazy how many people it's helped that, oh, I had the same issue. Here's your video, diagnosing the issue, fixing the issue, stuff you run into, like people with the 2020 actuators. One of my buddies, his actuator actually crapped out on his L5P. Now, if he probably didn't see my video, he probably would have went ahead ordered one. At the time, the actuators were different, and he'd be swapping over a bad actuator, his old turbo, to the new one, which wouldn't work. So it's actually kind of cool on how you can help people out in that way.
No, I mean, and that we talk about what, you know, what YouTube is and what that quality content is with, you know, Google searches, YouTube, things like that. These were things when I was getting into diesels 12 years ago, the magazines never talked about any of this.
No, you went to Comp D.
I mean, Comp D didn't have all this.
And then got your ass reamed for asking a question
maybe
before
you
using
did.
the search
I was the
function.
one reaming asses, all right? I was the one talking the shit.
You were 14 then.
No, I wasn't. I was like 16. I was 16 and I was fucking
this guy,
cool.
Denny, do you hear this shit? Denny, now one of
the thing too, like with the L5Ps, like a lot of times you ask questions and people try to ream me out and stuff like that, and it's really frustrating because you're actually having a physical issue with your truck and people are making fun of you, calling you idiot, this and that.
Well,
but at the end of the day, you just want to get your truck running 100%.
That's the forums, Denny. Like that is the, you know, the comp, like all joking aside, you know, we talk about like Comp D, Cummins Forum, Duramax Forum, this and that. The forums still have some popularity to them, but a lot of those forums have shifted into Facebook, and there's all the Facebook forums, and everyone's got an opinion. Everyone loves to regurgitate other information that they read or heard from somewhere else, and people are really, really aggressive.
Do you know what I like more about the Facebook groups than I did about the forums?
Dude, let's hear it.
No more usernames.
Yeah, right.
The ridiculous usernames we used to dig out of the forums were just, bro, I'm not calling you Squishy. I'm not writing a grown man and addressing you as Squishy.
Hold on, but now you can, if you're on YouTube and they're commenting on YouTube channels, they still have screen names.
We're back to it.
So
well, speaking of,
people aren't nice on YouTube either.
Yeah,
no, dude. We've had some doozies on our channel before. Let me tell you,
there's some fans out there for sure.
There are.
There's some fans out there.
There are.
Well, that's one of the things about growing a YouTube channel that I would imagine that you guys are seeing is that as you do some of the videos, you get people who pop up and they have nothing but thank yous, and this was so helpful, which I thought one of the ones you did, Denny, that was really smart was the GM's multi-pro tailgate versus the ball hitch. That's a no-brainer. We saw that happen at our shop.
Yeah,
from a well-respected technician.
Yeah.
Totally would have never thought that this would be something GM would engineer.
The dent is still there in the tailgate.
Completely fuck you.
Yeah.
Now, how close did you get? Now, okay, listeners, if you don't know, is it just in 2020 they came out with that multi-pro tailgate?
Correct.
Yeah. So in 2020, the GM tailgate, if you get it, folds down like a normal tailgate does, and then it folds again to create a step.
Correct.
Which is cool.
It's awesome if you don't have a hitch.
But if you have your receiver on there, so if you actually have the ball hitch in, that second fold will smash the top of your tailgate right into the ball hitch. maybe one of the dumbest features ever built on a diesel.
Is it a dumb feature or is it a dumb operator, Paul?
Dude, no, it's a dumb feature.
I mean, I could see you being the one to do it.
You should not have engineered this to be a problem.
Man.
Like, somebody at GM should have been like, hey, what about all these guys who buy these trucks and tow with them?
Paul,
won't they be fucking pissed?
Paul, you would be the person to sue McDonald's for serving you coffee that's hot and spilling it
How
on you.
dare
You're
you.
that person.
I would only sue. Nah, I probably wouldn't.
Scum.
But can you talk a little bit about some of those problems that you ran into? First of all, what was the solution you found for the multi-pro tailgate hitch? And then how do you guys come up with some of the new content that you're putting out there?
So basically with the multi-pro, there's basically just a little sensor that you can wire into the tailgate. There's just some wires up there you splice into. So basically when you put your pin in, it senses that there's a hitch in the receiver, and it will not let the multi-pro go down. I thought when I got it, it was like one of the dumbest things, the multi-pro. I've later come to find out that the Chevys have the power up tailgate. I'd rather have that 100%. You hit the button, tailgate goes up automatically. I'd rather have that one. I haven't even used my multi-pro once since I had the truck. And so I did that mod on there just so you cannot put it down with the receiver. And then my one buddy one day, he came over, he's looking at my truck, pressing all the buttons. He's like, why won't this one go down? It's a good thing that I have that, because you would just smash my tailgate into my hitch. So I'm really glad I got that. It already paid up for itself.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Okay, what do you think about the GM's 10-speed transmission?
I personally love the 10 speeds. There's definitely a lot to improve upon on them, though, obviously because trans tuning is not out for them yet. 17s or 19s shift like butter. They don't defuel when they're tuned. The 20s, they shift great. They're silky smooth. I mean, I've never had an issue with mine searching for gear or finding gears. Some people you talk to, they say that's an issue. With me, I never had that. I love the way it shifts. I get great fuel economy. The only downside is, you can't tune the trans, and obviously I'm trying to make some power and it's defueling on the shifts, but it's really never confused on what gear it should be in or anything like that that I've come to notice.
So you've had some seat time now with the 67 turbo with the 10 speed, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. And you have from your tuner the new switch on the fly, correct? The switch on the fly tuning? Okay. Yeah. Talk us through, there's a lot of L5P guys out there, and these are some modification upgrades that guys might be looking at. What is it like to have that elite, top of the market upgrades right now? What does the switch on the fly do? How do you like those characteristics? And how does everything kind of come together with a good, variable vane upgraded turbocharger right now?
I love the switch on the fly. It's so nice to be able to just turn your truck up when you want it. Before, there's so many times that I wanted to be in a high tune, but I wasn't because I didn't really want to push the limitations of my transmission or anything like that. But even with the Stealth, it's so nice that you can just turn it up, have all the power on tap. But say you just want to be daily driving and get some good fuel mileage, you can turn it down a little bit and not be so hard on all the equipment.
Okay.
Absolutely. Good feedback. Yeah. Now, Matt, you're on the call here with us, too, and you have quite a different build list going on with your truck. Can you walk our listeners through everything you've modified on your L5P?
Looking back, I can't even. I don't even remember how it all happened. It's just one day I had a diesel, and now here I am with 100% over injectors and S472 and a built trans. But it seems like time's flown. But I mean, I got my truck at an unusual time. Like I said earlier in the commentary, when I got my L5P, I was one of the first people, I would say, I think I got the first batch that was delivered to the dealership. So I was one of the first guys in my area to have one. And I was looking for, I was on, Duramax tuner site and really custom. I was getting ready to do all these upgrades, and then I've got a locked ECM. So I kind of had to sit on the sidelines it took about 18 months. I think tuning really started happening in the fall of 2018, I think.
Sounds right.
Yeah, fall of 2018. And I just needed some stuff to do. So I ended up putting a Cognito lift kit on my truck, some specialty forged wheels, and that was about it until tuning came out. And then finally tuning became available. I was one of the first people. This is what actually spawned me to really go more into YouTube as soon as the tuning became available. But tuning became available, got my truck tuned from Motor Ops. They did a great job. And then I kind of I thought that I wanted to be the industry, like the revolutionary. Like as soon as something comes out, I want to be the one to get it. I think it's going to spark interest, try to get views. Like that. This is my mindset. So I found out that Whirly Custom Fab was working on a 300 series charger for the L5P. So I started talking with some guys over there. Ended up coming out to Illinois or Marengo, I don't even remember, Woodstock, wherever they're located, and had the S369 put on. You guys were generous enough to have me on your dyno to showcase some of those figures. I got a built transmission done at the same time. So that was kind of like the first power upgrade adders that I did. Came back home 6 months later. Jason's putting out a 400 series. So it has the custom Y bridge, twisted pedestal. Like it looked mint. Like a lot of time and energy went into, I could tell, this kit. People were, some people that were testing it, other myself, were peaking like 1,000 horsepower with fuel, and I'm like, I gotta have it. So I sold my S369, bought a 472, and ended up getting 100% over injectors at the same time. And this is kind of my current setup right now, and it drives great. I love it. And then you guys go out and release the Stealth 67, a turbo that I've been waiting for 2 years.
Yeah, Matt's
now,
literally.
Now I'm literally beside myself. Like I've had off camera or audio conversation with Chris all the time. I'm like, what am I going to do right now? Like this is a turbo that I've been asking for 2 years, and here it is. So I don't know what I'm going to do. My plan is maybe to incorporate it somewhere, somehow down the road, because I miss, even though I absolutely love my setup and it drives really good, there's something about variable geometry turbo that just I miss. Like I had 40,000 miles on my truck before I put the S369 on it, and I just miss the way that it drove. And we'll see. Time will tell. That might be in the future, but why'd you guys have to come out with it now?
Perfection takes time, my friend.
That brings up a good point, though, because Matt, one of the things that I really liked about your channel is you did more than one shopping video. Like a lot of guys, when they're deciding on a part, especially in the YouTube channel, they'll make one video. Hey, I'm thinking about tires. Here's all the tires I'm thinking about. Go ahead and leave a comment and tell me what tires I should get. Right. And then the next video, they've already gone out and picked the tires that they were going to pick anyways and put them on the truck. Whereas then I caught on your channel, like especially when you were considering tuning, there's quite a few options you were considering at the time. What did it feel like to go through and shop for tuning, especially since you knew you wanted to be one of the first ones to get it?
Oh my gosh, it was crazy because at the time I've had no diesel experience, so I've never had tuning. I've never had anything to go off of before. Like I never had an LVZ, or I couldn't even tell you what EZ Link or EFI Live was, or an AutoCal they call them at the time. And here I am, got this diesel truck. I'm learning everything that I want to learn, and the only place for information is the forums, the Tune forum, or whatever it wants to call it. And we've already talked about how much of dog eat dog world it is there. So you started seeing the big names come out. Corey Willis was starting to put out tunes. Motor Ops got mentioned. CTT wasn't around at the time. They weren't brought up till, I don't know, 2020 maybe at the end of 2019. So it was really motor at the time for the tuning that I was looking for. It was either PPEI or Motor Ops, and you spent a couple days just going back and forth. A couple people had gotten their truck tuned by then, but at the end of the day, what led me to Motor Ops over PPI is that people, it's not myself, I can't speak to it. I can now, but I couldn't at the time. People talked about the service that Motor Ops had, and how they really liked their service. And at the end of the day, when I was going to jump into something that at the time cost $8,000 to tune your truck, I wanted a company that would be there. That would be there for me, should I have any issues or whatnot, because, you could tell at the time that this was a huge improvement, a huge step when HP tuners released their unlock and everything that went around with it, that you're going to want a company that would be there for you and help you get through any trouble at the time that you're going to have. So that's what ultimately made my decision. I guess people's recommendation based on service. There's no YouTube videos. There was no one else had done it or put out content yet. Like this was it. I think I was probably one of the first dozen or two trucks in the country that probably was tuned. And I went through my fair share of problems too. I've got videos out there about a depth light that wouldn't go away, took months. And, it's part of the game, I guess. So,
well, I wanted to talk to you about that as well, because you also have had this kind of unique feature, like we were talking about with Denny, about showing some of the harder problems and addressing some of the topics that kind of everybody is asking but nobody is saying. And I thought that was really cool. And we see that, I think, when you're shopping for your turbos as well. And I know we've already talked about this a little bit, but you had that time there where you had the S300 on it, and then the 400 comes out. You're like, I got to make the switch. I got to get the 1,000 horsepower. That's a big, for most guys, that's like a big pill to swallow, especially to say, like, I bought something and maybe it's not as great as I thought it was. How do you feel the differences are between the S369, the S400? Did you make the right decision?
Well, looking back now that the Stealth came out and I threw out everything that was factory, now I can't put one on without finding all the stock features. I don't know if I made the right decision, Paul, but if you're looking at the decision between the 300 and the 400 kits that Jason put out over at Whirly Custom Fab, I 100% made a better decision. And I'm not, the 369 is a great turbo and make great power, but I think the combination with the turbo and the injectors, my driving experience now is completely different than when it was with just, an S369. And it's hard for me to distinguish whether it was adding the fuel or just changing the charger, because I did them both at the same time. So it was hard for me to be like, man, these injectors really help my drivability. They help, fueling the turbo down lower, so it's not as laggy. Like, I wish I had that experience, but unfortunately, how I ended up putting things together, I wasn't able to take it in two steps. I did it all at once. But I mean, honestly, it's night and day. And, I can't wait to add even more fuel and see what that's going to do and go from there. But I made the right decision going to the S400 kit. Besides the way that it looks, it performs exactly how I'd like it to perform. And that's better than the 369. You're still missing some of the like down low when you lose your DVT, but
you're talking about drivability at that point.
Drivability,
You're talking about
you lose a little bit down low.
You're talking about the responsiveness of the truck, and the turbos that you're talking about all make great power. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. But to your point, like talking about something with a variable vane again, there's something to be said when you talk about a street truck, and something. In my eyes, street truck is quick response down low in real broad power band. And these style turbos, like for me personally, I think the 400 drives nicer than the 300 on an L5P or any of the Duramaxes.
Really?
Yeah, because I think
I agree.
The turbine wheel to aspect ratio of the exhaust housing, I think, is a better pair. It's a better match. So that turbocharger is actually going to spool a little bit more linearly, if you will. I don't know if that's the right word, but it's going to be more linear in how it responds than like what a 300 would be. So even though the turbo's smaller, the turbine wheel compared to the exhaust housing is not as proportionate or as proportional compared to like what the 400 would be.
Interesting.
So the housing size, the aspect ratio being like, let's say it's a 0.91 AR and you have a 74 millimeter turbine in there, the turbine's fairly small for that looseness in the housing compared to an 83 millimeter turbine wheel or even an 87 millimeter turbine wheel, which I believe Matt's going to have, probably that 83 on his. So what does the future hold for your truck? I mean, what are we looking at next? Are we talking 1,000 wheel horsepower, single S400 turbo breaking hearts? Are we talking a compound turbo system, street truck tow rig at 1,000 horse? Like, what's that next piece of the puzzle look like for the truck and the YouTube channel?
Well, on the short term, I'm finishing up some visual stuff that's been aching at me. That will be done in the next couple months, and I'll be sharing that stuff on my channel. You guys can definitely go ahead and check that out. But 1,000 horsepower is on the horizon, and it's not that far away. I plan to hit it this year. With the performance parts that are out right now, I think it's going to be on my S400. But I would say my ultimate ultimate goal, and I hope I can get there one day, and you know, the kits come out for it, is I'd really like an S488 over a Stealth 67, just like a sweet street truck, drives great, very snappy and responsive, you know, and then just, you know, tuned down to probably around, you know, 900, 1,000 horsepower, even though it'll probably do all of 1,200, Chris, maybe even more than that. Who knows?
I mean, depending on what pump you have and everything like that, there's a lot of things that come into it, but the air side of things is definitely capable of that.
Sure.
So let me ask you guys, I'm new into Duramax, I'm new into L5P, okay? What are some of the do's and don'ts, right? I'm a novice guy. I'm just looking for a little experience. I watch you guys on YouTube. So what would you guys say are some of the do's in the L5P performance? What are some of those first steps look like?
I say do tune your truck. Whether you go compliant or non-compliant, I say it's like a mandatory.
Okay.
For me, I wouldn't even wait for your warranty to be out. I would just go ahead and do it. It just changes the responsiveness and drivability of the truck. It makes it more fun. You know, you guys, you know, Duramax, say you go compliant. Duramax Tuner's been tuning trucks for, 10 years or longer? Like, you guys have the experience. You know how to tune a good truck. It just, you don't even have to worry about any of the emission stuff. I would say go ahead and do it. Tune your truck.
I like that.
Denny,
I like that.
how about yourself?
I get a lot of people. I have 14 wides on my truck. A lot of people come up to me and say, "Hey, I just brought a Duramax. I want to run some different wheels and tires. How do you clear them?" What I personally did on my truck was I cranked my keys, and my truck rides like a total friggin' brick. So I tell people, just get the proper leveling kit so it rides nice. Don't crank your keys all the way up. And make sure you get an alignment afterwards. I learned that the hard way. I did not align my truck after I cranked the keys, and I wore down my set of expensive Nitto paired Raptors pretty quickly.
Okay.
Oh, no.
Now, how about some of the don'ts,
Yeah.
guys? What are some of the things that you would, recommend kind of shying away from as a new L5P enthusiast in the space?
I mean, getting into it now, the biggest thing coming up now with the L5Ps, as you guys probably see, is the glow plug delete kits. I mean, I think that stuff's a total waste. A lot of people do that. Oh, I'm going to drop a glow plug in their piston, this and that. So I just advise, don't do that. Just if you ever pop a glow plug code, just get it replaced. But a lot of times the dealers just take it back in and reset it. They reset it. Just replace it and just be done with it. And don't waste your time or effort on deleting glow plugs.
It's so funny you bring
I
that
agree
up,
with
Denny.
that.
I was in a meeting the other day, and
It was like 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, 2 weeks ago,
yeah.
and we were talking about reading some stuff on the L5P pages,
And
I was like, straight up, I was like, hold on, is this a joke that I'm not getting? Like, is this like way back in the day, Chris? Do you remember LB7 High Idle?
Yeah.
It was a rock. The
Yeah.
Alligator Performance used to have literally a rock that they had on their website as a joke, saying like, hey, if you want LB7 High Idle, the only thing you're going to do is physically press down the pedal. They still had people buy it, not knowing that it was a joke. So I thought this glow plug delete kit
Paul was like
just
your
like a big
80-year-old
joke.
grandma that was completely lost, bringing it up in a marketing meeting.
Yeah,
and I'm like,
what is
Paul,
this?
are you stupid?
People are
Like,
actually
yeah.
am I stupid?
Well, okay, you want to know what the
I
best
didn't think
part
anybody
is?
was so dumb that they would do this.
These guys are going to your local hardware store. Like, it looks like hardware bolts, and they're charging through the ass for them. It's nuts. It's nuts.
Yeah.
Matt.
And the biggest thing, too, is people like, oh, you're going to break them off in your cylinders. I'm like, when's the last time you've heard of someone doing that? I've not heard one person coming to me personally.
I mean,
with L5P
10, 12-year-old trucks.
I was going to say an
10
old
to 12-year-old
truck for
trucks
sure.
that
That's
have
the
never
big
had them
concern.
out, you know. But I mean, these trucks have been through, Nam and back.
Well, yeah,
you know?
no. If you have 200,000 miles on your LB7 and you're trying to get the glow plugs out, chances are it's going to be a bad day.
Yeah.
Even in your best case scenarios, it's going to be a really shitty day.
But if you replace them,
when they actually go out or routinely, or if you have an L5P, there's absolutely no reason for it. That's such a good don't. Good job, Denny.
Matt, how about yourself? What's a don't?
What do you got?
Don't get a lift pump until you absolutely need one. There was a lot of talks going around when this all first started. L5P runs out of fuel. So you saw everyone putting lift pumps on. Well, factory lift pumps good for almost 800 horsepower. So you saw people running around on standard, just regular max effort tunes, saying that they're running out of fuel. Well, you're not.
Okay.
So you don't need a lift pump.
Boom. Okay. That's a good one. I like that. Guys, let's see. We're getting close to the end here, so there's just a few more questions I got before we wrap up today. Number one, Denny, what's the best upgrade you did for your truck?
Definitely drivability. I just did the Stealth 67 drop-in, and it literally changes the drivability of the truck so much. When I first put it on, it's like rumbles so much more at idle, but up top it's so like whistles like crazy. You can't even like compare it to anything. I just think it's so different in its own way, and just the power you get from that is insane. But that's like the biggest power upgrade I've done so far. But planning on doing my injectors here soon too, so that might be another one.
Cool.
Nice. What about you, Matt? What's the best thing you've done to your truck?
I'm gonna go with the injectors. The injectors and the S472. I'm extremely happy the way that my truck drives right now and handles in regards to the S369. So
that's a big swing. Getting the injectors and turbo at the same time on this truck it's
big.
Like opening up a whole new animal. It is like going out and getting another vehicle because it's going to be totally different. So that's a good one, man. I like that.
I wish that I could have done them not in tandem. Like I wish I could have done my injectors to see how it changed the drivability of the S369. I guess that's probably one of my biggest regrets right now. Going back is I just wish I still would have gotten the S472 no matter what, because I wanted to just be one of the guys on the street that had it first. But I wish I would have gotten the injectors, and then I would have put the turbo on. I mean, I did them both at the same time, and like I said, it was night and day difference. Like I was blown away how different it was.
Cool.
And I don't know which one to contribute it to more. And I feel like if I would have done the injectors before, I probably would have had a better idea. But it is what it is. That's definitely my favorite thing that I've done to my truck.
I like it. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining us today. I know you guys are both really, really busy, and I know our listeners are going to love hearing from you. If our listeners do want to find more content from you, Denny, how can they find you?
You can look me up on YouTube at Denny Diesel, and same thing on Instagram at _Denny Diesel.
All right. Matt, how about yourself?
Same thing, YouTube, Duramax Matt, and my Instagram is my name, Matthew S. Merrick. So you can find me on YouTube and on Instagram.
Cool.
I love it. Guys, anybody you want to give a shout out to today?
My mom and dad and my girlfriend, Hannah.
All right.
Well played, Denny. Matt?
I like that.
Sharing any love?
Shout out to my wife. My wife who allows me to take time and make content when I get around to it, and then my 8-month-old daughter. Huge shout out to her. She's going to be featured on the channel as it keeps continuing to grow.
Very
That's
cool.
awesome. Well, guys, listeners, make sure you stick around. We have some really exciting in the shop segments coming up with our super tech Jeremy Garnett. And, of course, we're going to be talking about some knowledge base articles at the end of the show. Make sure you stick around. All right, guys, I'm excited to be here to talk with our super tech Jeremy Garnett. Jeremy, how the hell are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing good. Guys, if you've never heard the show before, we bring Jeremy on as a super tech out of Duramax Tuner's very own diesel performance shop. Jeremy, you've been working on cars forever.
20 years or so.
Diesel trucks for a long time as well.
Yep.
So we thought we would give Jeremy a chance to kind of come on and tell us some cool stories about all of the stuff that you get to see on your normal day-to-day. So hit me with it, man. What's the truck we're talking about?
This week we got a 15 LML.
Ooh, I love me some LMLs. 15 LML too, so this is right at the tail end of model years for LMLs,
Yep.
right? They ran 11 to 16. What were the symptoms or what was the problem that they brought to you?
Well, this one here, customers from Florida, just driving up, had a big trailer on the back, and he came in saying he had engine codes, emission codes, and brought it in, and he gave us a list of codes that he brought at the dealer, or
Yeah.
he brought it to a dealer, a list of codes that the dealer wrote down, and the dealer had said, okay, you need to replace the whole EGR system. Actuator, coolers, and the EGR itself.
Not a cheap job, certainly not cheap from a dealership.
Right. So the guy didn't like his quote and didn't like what the dealer had to say, so he was not too far from us, and he was going to stay in the area for a little bit and left his truck with us.
Nice. Okay.
Got a look at it, and we got it fixed up for him. And basically, he only needed an actuator on the EGR itself that bolts to the cooler.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is one we've dealt with a lot where somebody will have one cause problem,
Yep.
and then it incurs a whole host of codes. So somebody who first scans it is like, oh, you got the whole list of codes. We'll just replace everything.
Exactly.
How much time do you spend digging into the diagnostics to find that root cause?
A good time. And in this case, actually, yes. But what is the main cause? Like, okay, can this code or can this cause something else?
Right.
Or is this not going to cause this? And we spend a lot of time. I mean, it's what we do. I mean, it's what we do here.
Yeah.
As we try our best to give the customer the best, quality and the best job that we can without taking their paycheck,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's just it, right? It's because sometimes you look at a job like that where the dealership quotes you this astronomical fee, and it's like, well, if we spend 2 hours really digging into this and we find out that it's something that's going to cost you a lot less, boom, that's a net savings. No question about it, right?
Yep.
How'd the EGR look when you tore it apart?
It was beautiful. And
that's one of your first indicators.
Yeah.
The whole story's not there.
That's what I said. I was like, Jamie, our vice president, was walking through, and he drives an LML as well.
Sure.
So he comes up. He's like, "Hey, how's this truck doing?" I'm like, "You got to look at this." I'm like, so I'd pulled the actuator off, and because at that point we already sold the customer the actuator with potential of something else may be in bad once it comes apart.
Right.
Because you can't look inside of it when it's on the truck. So we did pull it apart, and I want to make sure that I didn't see coolant or I didn't see a ton of soot inside the EGR.
Yeah.
And the cooler itself or in the EGR. So got it apart, and I'm like, Jamie, this truck's got 100K on it. I'm like, his truck's got 100K. I'm like, you got to look at this. I'm like,
yeah.
It was clean. I didn't even feel like I had to put air or any sort of solvent through it.
God, that's the best, isn't it?
Yeah. So, it turned out good. Got it put back together and no codes, and we drove it for a good 60 miles or so, and the guy hasn't called back yet.
That's so money. That's so good. That's like such a success story of somebody who spent a fraction of what they were told and got all of the results that they were looking for, especially with somebody like we see the best health out of emissions equipment for guys who do tow long distances, right? So it is interesting that was the situation. Give our listeners the pro tip for the week, man. What'd you learn?
Instructions before you do the job. And I've done quite a few trucks before, and just instructions before you do the job. I mean, guidelines, like, okay, you have to take this apart to take this apart. Just it sometimes reading something for 5 minutes might save you an hour.
I like that.
Just instructions. Even when you're doing anything, aftermarket parts, instructions.
That's right. That's right. Good stuff, man. I love that. Well, Jeremy, thank you so much for stopping by the show.
Oh, no problem. Thanks for having me again.
Absolutely. Listeners, stick around. Coming up next, we're going to be talking about troubleshooting another real-world diesel performance problem right here with one of our experts. All right, guys, and now we're here with our diesel expert, Sean Lynn, again. Sean, how the hell are you?
Good. How are you, Paul?
I'm doing great, man. Thanks for asking. Sean, we've been having you on the show for most of 2021 now. How do you feel about doing this segment? Do you enjoy coming down and doing this part of the show with us?
Oh, yeah. I love coming down here and helping people out as best I can, and that's my job.
I love it, man. Yeah. So Sean works full-time up in our customer service division. He is here specifically to help Duramax tuner and calibrated power customers sort out any problems that they weren't able to figure out through the instructions or other resources. Now, Sean, I know one thing you told me before the show, there are a lot of resources for customers to find help with troubleshooting, whether they've bought our products or not. What are some of those places people can go to get some help solving this if an expert like you isn't immediately available?
Yeah, that's a good question, Paul. We have a whole bunch of YouTube videos out there with a lot of scenarios and people run into on a daily basis, such as switch installing and such.
Absolutely. Hey, switch installing, that's what I wanted to talk about today. I remember for years working on the phone, I always got this question, and I recently just saw it in one of our social media posts. Somebody was asking, or somebody had said, I installed my DSP5 switch on my LBZ, cannot feel any difference in the tunes. What is going on? Now, that person was very convinced that they had not installed their tuning correctly, but I think you had worked with them and kind of gone through some of this to really help them figure out what is happening. So can you help our listeners out? If somebody has just installed tuning in a switch and they go to rotate the switch and they don't feel any power difference, what the fuck?
Well, typically in a situation like that, the first thing we would do is pull up the spade and do a data log. And one of the parameters on there lets you actually see which tune number you're in. And if you rotate the switch, it should change every single time. Otherwise, it's either an improperly installed switch or something else is going on.
I love that. Yeah, so that's a real common one. I know I used to deal especially on the LB7s because the harness on the LB7 is such a pain in the dick. But I know a lot of guys with LB7s used to not get the pin seated all the way when you go to do it. So to install a DSP-5 switch, you have 2 wires that run through the hood latch release grommet. This is in your Duramax or Cummins. And then it wires down into the actual harness that plugs into your ECM. The LB7 harness has a little bolt on it, so you actually have to get a wrench in there and actually back that out. And then you sink the pins into the harness. If you don't sink the pins, you could install the tune all you want, but it's never going to fucking work.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there are other trucks that rely on some other parameters and work a little bit differently. So I know this example was an LBZ. What are some of the variations of switch troubleshooting that you deal with?
Yeah, I would say for a lot of the older Duramaxes and Cummins trucks as well, the parameter is the same. It'll say DSP tune number or CSP for a Cummins.
Right.
And then if we're talking about the LMLs or the newer Ford trucks as well, then it would be fuel temperature. It's typically fuel temperature number 2 on the LMLs, and then one of the fuel temperatures on the Ford as well.
That's right. Yeah. So those switches work a little bit differently. Those aren't technically DSP switches. They work off of more of like a limiting table, which is based on fuel temp or programmed through fuel temp. So you'd be looking for those. We should make the note the Cummins switch installs very differently than any of the Duramax or the Power Stroke switch.
Yeah, the Cummins is the easiest out of all of them, and it just plugs into the OBD2 port.
That's right. Hey, do we still have the test light on the back of the Cummins switch? I think we have the test light on all the switches, don't we?
Yeah, there's a test light on all the back of the switches. For the older Duramaxes, it's not entirely accurate, but it certainly helps narrow down if you got it plugged in right or not.
That's right. Yeah, a continuity switch. We should be clear here. So there's a continuity test light on the back of the switches. Most of them will just say that. Where if you have it plugged in properly, or at least have the pins all the way seated in the harness, you should be able to test continuity. So in other words, make sure that there's a current running through the switch, right? That's really handy if you have installed the wires and you're about to mount the switch. And before you mount the switch, you just want to make sure, have I nailed it, right? Like, do I have this right? And that's a really good indicator there.
Yeah, and the Cummins, as well as the 2.8 Duramax, the light typically flashes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times to let you know you're in tune number 1 through 5.
That's so handy, isn't it?
And that's one of the only ones that can do that.
Now, L5P, we haven't been dealing with as many switch on the fly problems or is my tune switching because the L5P switches very differently than anything else we tune.
Yeah, that's definitely the easiest in terms of installation because you just load the tune and hit the button and go.
Yeah. So we use the cruise control command on your steering wheel to be able to jump in and switch tunes. So if you guys are looking for instructions on that, you can check out DuramaxTuner.com, or even I think another great resource for people is go check out the knowledge base. So that's knowledgebase.DuramaxTuner.com.
Yeah, whenever somebody's stuck installing a switch, we typically go over the basics and then we'll send them the HubSpot articles that we have to help them get the switch installed properly.
Perfect. Awesome. Sean, any other tips out there for switch installs?
If the switch is operating properly and you still don't feel a difference in tuning, we generally tell people to go over 50% throttle because we try to keep the power level very similar between 1 through 5.
Nice. Yeah, that used to be, that was my old kind of one in the back pocket there was throw the tune switch all the way to 1, so rotate it all the way counterclockwise, give it a wide open throttle pass. Let her come down, cool off, then you're going to throw it directly into tune 5 and do another wide open throttle pass. There should be 140 horsepower difference between those two tunes. You should feel that in the seat.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Great stuff. Sean, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Paul.
Hey, guys, stick around. Chris is going to be right back on the show, and we're going to wrap everything up today.
Increase the durability, line pressure, and performance of the Allison transmission in your GM 6.6-liter Duramax LML and L5P with the XDP EPC solenoid Fooler plug. From the factory, the EPC solenoid increases line pressure up to 230 psi during shifting. Once the shift is complete, the pressure drops back down to 80 psi. At 80 psi of line pressure, your Allison cannot hold the added stress from aftermarket upgrades or heavy towing. The XDP EPC solenoid Fooler fixes this issue by installing onto the solenoid and back into the valve body. This lets your transmission effectively operate at 230 psi all the time. This eliminates clutch slipping, poor shifting, and extends transmission life. To find out more about the XDP EPC solenoid Fooler plug, check out xdp.com or find a local dealer near you.
Worley Custom Fabrication is known for their world-class powder coating, S300, S400, traction bars, and all sorts of other just really, really cool parts for your Duramax, Cummins, and I think even a few Power Stroke parts here and there. Today, we're going to be talking about the 2020 GMC 2500 and 3500 Fender Flare Billet Marker Light Delete Kit. These brand new L5Ps have the marker lights, and a lot of guys don't like them. Just flat out, just a lot of guys are not into that look. What they would prefer to have is a color-matched billet piece right there to delete that light kit and have it just look a little bit cleaner on the truck, a little bit less flashy. So it's kind of a really cool understated exterior piece. And I think it's one of those that it's pretty easy to scan over, but once you see it, you're like, oh, I get it and I love it. So these will help you clean up the look of your 2020 GMC Sierra or Denali HD truck by replacing the amber Fender Flare marker lights with these CAD designed, CNC machined, billet aluminum marker light delete plates from WC Fab. Available with machined WC Fab logo or without, in raw aluminum, or of course, what you're all going to choose, paint matching of fine texture or fine texture black powder coat to blend into the OEM black plastic Fender Flare trim. Installs very, very easily. It's a couple of simple hand tools. Comes with everything that you guys are going to need to install it. If you are thinking about it, or if you have one and you'd like to clean up the look a little bit, no problem at all. Jump over to wcfab.com and you'll be able to find that part right away. The other sponsor I wanted to talk about today is Exergy Performance. With their background in OE development and manufacturing, Exergy Performance brings a unique perspective to the high-performance world. They know what features and specifications need to be to ensure proper function, they know how to produce them, and they know how to verify that they're correct. The verification process and the equipment that they use is very untypical of a standard diesel repair shop. It actually allows them to look at many more system performance characteristics beyond just the average fuel output, which is how most shops will just test it. What they test is actually from idle to full power using factory calibration points and a few points of their own that they've added for the high performance market. They can fully map a set of injectors and have done so for, I don't know, a countless number of people out there. The guys who are running at the very top of the industry are running Exergy. The guys who are running their normal street truck are running Exergy. Every one of our employees who has a modified set of injectors is running Exergy. There's a reason that we use them time and time again. If you guys are looking for more, you can check out Exergy's website, but you're probably best off giving a call over to DuramaxTuner.com, giving a call over to WC Fab, giving a call over to any of their distributors who are out there. Also, if you need technical assistance and you've bought from a distributor, I believe you could still reach out to Exergy if you need to. All right, guys. Wow, what a great show today. I had a lot of fun talking to Matt and to Denny.
I just got to say, right, I wonder how things would have been different for myself if 10, 12 years ago I was able to learn information just off of YouTube and Google searches versus me having to read through the magazines and get on the forums and stuff like that. Like, information is so much easier to obtain in today's world than it was years back.
Yeah, but 10 years ago, you weren't going to search any of that shit out. I mean, even if it was all there, you still would have grabbed a bucket full of wrenches and went and torn down a 12 valve.
You're 100%. But what I'm saying is you know how many hours I have on the forums, from reading in the magazines and the money on the magazines that I was subscribed to.
Can we
years
talk
ago?
a little bit about how much we don't miss forums?
I don't miss them.
Not
I don't
at
know.
all.
I'll take that back. I do miss forums because I think Facebook forums are total bullshit. So like, I would much rather go on to the OG forums.
I logged into Duramax forum just the other day for work.
Yeah.
And it was like the first login on the company account in like 4 years or 5 years or something. And I scrolled through most recent post and I was just started laughing out loud to the point that my wife was walking by the door to like my home office and like opened the door. I was like, what's so funny? And I'm like, oh my God, I don't miss this at all. Like the Facebook groups, moderators in Facebook groups is a joke.
Yep.
Like it's a
rough.
joke compared to the old ones. But man, I don't miss the forums.
I was just on Cummins forum the other day. Nick had actually sent me over his login. I had a couple things to do in there. There were a couple really cool write-ups on some of the stealth turbos.
Did you just admit to sharing logins?
Yeah.
That's basically piracy.
Oh, anyways.
I'm okay with that.
So it was definitely crazy because I haven't been on Cummins forum since like 15.
Yeah.
So it's been 5-6 years since I had my silver truck.
Yeah.
So things have changed. Navigating through everything was a little tough, but yeah, no, I don't miss them.
There's,
at the end of the day.
a lot less posts, man.
Yeah.
And hey, to you guys out there who are still on the forums, more power to you.
Yeah,
if you're comfortable with that format and you're getting information, there are gems hidden amongst the bullshit.
There is good information in any of these media outlets.
Yeah, absolutely.
The problem is deciphering what's right and what's wrong, and that's what's tough.
Right, absolutely. Yeah, and I think that's where today's guests, like Denny and Matt, they've done a really good job at trying to consume some of this information. I think both of them are guys who went out and tried to learn and then said, you know what, I'm going to put my money where my mouth is and I'm going to go try this in real life. Yeah. And that's something that's really powerful. Also, big shout out to the other help we had on today's show, Sean Lynn and Jeremy Garnett. Really big appreciation for those guys and what they do for our show. Mm-hmm. Hey, guys, if you love hearing them, make sure you go on to Fans of Diesel Performance podcast and give them a shout out. And anybody who hasn't done so, we really could use some fresh 5-star reviews. If you think we're less than 5 stars, please email CEHMKE@DuramaxTuner.com and let him know why.
For
today, this has been Paul Wilson
and Chris Emke.
Thanks for listening.
I'm old. We're in this industry. We're old. We've been around the block.